You call it revenge because that word sounds strong. But the truth is uglier. Revenge is obedience. It's you accepting their terms, letting their damage write your next move, your next week, your next identity. A man who seeks revenge is not powerful. He's hooked. He's a dog pulling toward the hand that hit him, convinced the pull is pride. That's how enemies keep weak men on a leash. Not with chains, with unfinished emotional business. Here's the Machiavellian lens you've avoided. The person who hurt you already won once. Not because they were better, because they got inside your head. They made themselves the central problem of your life. They turned your attention into tribute. Revenge is you paying that tribute willingly. You want balance. You want justice. You want them to feel what you felt. That's moral poetry. Pretty, useless, deadly. In power terms, revenge does three things every time. It reveals you're wounded. It exposes your buttons. It keeps you close to the enemy, and closeness is control. Machiavelli didn't teach men to be good. He taught men to win to secure position, to protect sovereignty, to avoid traps dressed as virtue. Revenge is one of those traps. It masquerades as strength while draining your resources. Time, focus, reputation, optionality. Optionality is power. Revenge destroys optionality because it locks you into one objective, getting even. And getting even is the mindset of a lower rank. The higher rank doesn't get even. The higher rank repositions so the other man becomes irrelevant. That's the frame shift. You are not trying to hurt them back. You are trying to outlive them socially, outgrow them strategically, and outmaneuver them structurally. Because the cleanest win is the win that leaves them no angle to touch you again. Most men confuse not taking revenge with being soft. Wrong. Soft men forgive everyone and keep giving access. That's not what this is. This is colder. You don't forgive. You don't rage. You remove. You treat the person who hurt you like a bad investment. You exit the position. You cut exposure. You stop feeding the asset. Not because you're moral, because you're a strategist. And strategists understand something the emotionally honest man never learns. The goal is not emotional satisfaction. The goal is advantage. Revenge feels good in imagination because it gives you a temporary illusion of control. It's a fantasy of dominance that costs nothing until you act. And when you act, the cost arrives. You give them a story to sell about you. You give the public a reason to doubt your stability. You give them legal, social, or relational leverage. You give them escalation opportunities. Even when revenge works, it brands you as reactive, someone who can be provoked into self-destruction. That is not a crown. That is a collar. So what's the replacement frame? Winning without revenge means you punish through outcomes, not outbursts. You don't swing at them. You change the terrain so they can't reach you, can't benefit from you, can't define you, and can't recruit others against you effectively. You become the man they can't access, can't predict, can't bait. That's sovereignty. And sovereignty has a brutal rule. Your emotions do not get to steer your strategy. Your emotions are weather. Strategy is architecture. If you're honest, revenge isn't about justice. It's about humiliation. You felt small, so you want them smaller. You felt powerless, so you want a moment of control. Machiavellian power doesn't chase moments. It builds positions. So this video does one psychological thing. It strips revenge of its dignity. It shows you revenge is not vengeance, it's continued servitude. Because the real victory isn't they suffer. The real victory is this. They hurt you and still failed to change the trajectory of your life. That's the win. Anything else is you still living under their shadow. They hurt you once. Revenge is how they keep hurting you forever without lifting a finger. Because revenge isn't an action. It's a psychological contract you sign the moment you decide, I need to get even. From that moment on, your mind becomes occupied territory. Your attention becomes a hostage. Your daily energy starts paying rent to the person you claim to hate. Here's the mechanism in cold terms. It starts with an injury. Something hits your ego, your pride, your sense of control. That injury turns into rumination. You replay it again and again. Rumination feeds a fantasy of payoff, what you'll say, how they'll regret it. That fantasy releases dopamine, not relief, stimulation. Stimulation turns into compulsion. You keep thinking because it feels like progress. Compulsion leads to exposure. You leak emotion, you reveal intent, and that exposure invites retaliation, which creates a new injury, and the loop resets, and every step makes you easier to control. When you're wronged, your brain opens a loop that demands closure. Humans hate unfinished stories. That's why you replay the scene, rewrite what you should have said, imagine different outcomes. That replay feels like processing. It isn't. It's mental captivity. Your enemy doesn't need to chase you. Your brain chases them for free, trying to complete what happened. And the more you replay it, the more important they become in your internal hierarchy. You're promoting them inside your head. The real pain isn't always what they did. It's what their action implied about you. He thinks I'm weak. She thinks I'm replaceable. They got away with it. I looked stupid. That's not justice. That's ego bleeding out. Revenge becomes attractive because it promises to reverse the status loss. You want a moment where the scoreboard flips and the room sees it. But here's the Machiavellian truth. The man who needs the room to see it is already losing. Because now your strategy is built around validation, not advantage. This is where men get fooled. Imagining revenge produces a hit of relief, control in the imagination, dominance in the daydream. Your nervous system calms for a moment because the fantasy simulates victory. That relief is a drug. So you return to it again and again, rehearsing payback, stalking their life, watching for openings, plotting the perfect moment. And while you're high on that illusion, your real life gets neglected. That's the trap. Revenge makes you feel powerful while making you less powerful. A man fueled by revenge becomes impatient. He wants the relief again, this time in reality. So he makes moves too early, too loud, too emotional. And emotional moves are predictable. Predictability is what enemies exploit. Revenge creates leakage. Your tone changes, your focus narrows, your behavior becomes reactive. People sense instability. Allies back away. Your opponent gains something priceless. Your tells. Now they can frame you, bait you, or prepare for you. The cleanest victory for the person who hurt you is not escaping consequences. It's turning you into the villain. When you retaliate, especially publicly, you hand them a story. He's obsessed. He's unhinged. He couldn't let it go. See, I was right about him. This is why revenge is so easy to defeat. It arrives with a confession attached. I'm still affected. In power games, the first man to look emotional loses legitimacy. And legitimacy is leverage. Once retaliation begins, it rarely ends clean. They respond. You respond. Others get involved. The conflict becomes bigger than the original wound. Now it's identity warfare. Now it's reputation warfare. Now it's social collateral damage. And all of it started because you wanted a feeling, closure. That's the mechanism. Pain hooks you by promising relief, and that promise turns into compulsion, exposure, and escalation. So what do you do with pain if you don't convert it into revenge? You convert it into repositioning. You stop asking, how do I hurt them back? And ask the only question that produces power. How do I remove their access, remove their influence, and increase my advantage while they lose options? That's what this video is going to sharpen. The kinds of people who hurt you, and the specific traps each type sets to lure you into revenge. You keep asking, why would someone do that to me? Wrong question. The right question is, what kind of person benefits from hurting me, and what trap are they trying to pull me into next? Because hurt is not always accidental. Sometimes it's a method. Sometimes it's positioning. Sometimes it's bait. A Machiavellian strategist doesn't moralize the attacker. He classifies them, like identifying a predator by its teeth marks. Different predators hunt differently. Different predators require different counters. Here are the archetypes that hurt you on purpose, and how they try to drag you into revenge. This one harms you to extract a reaction. They insult you, embarrass you, disrespect you. Then watch. Their goal is not your pain. Their goal is your loss of composure. Because once you react, they own the frame. If you explode, you become crazy. If you argue, you become insecure. If you retaliate, you become dangerous. And they become the victim with clean hands. Provokers hunt reputations. They want you to self-destruct in public so the room turns against you. Their trap, make you swing first so they can sell the story. This one hurts you in small cuts, dismissal, entitlement, disrespect, while still consuming your time, energy, resources, loyalty. If you confront them, they act wounded. If you pull back, they guilt you. If you demand fairness, they call you selfish. They don't want revenge from you. They want continued access while making you feel wrong for noticing. And if you snap and retaliate, perfect. Now you're the bad guy and they're the innocent one who tried. Their trap, trigger your anger so your boundaries look cruel. This one hurts you when it's convenient. They'll betray you, undermine you, embarrass you, especially when there's an audience or a ladder to climb. They don't do it from hate. They do it from calculation. If you seek revenge, you usually miss the real battlefield. The room, the narrative, the alliances. Opportunists don't fight you directly. They fight you through perception. They rely on one fact: most men retaliate emotionally, and emotional retaliation makes you look unstable. Their trap. Push you into a visible reaction so they can look above it while you look obsessed. This one enjoys the harm. They needle you, humiliate you, provoke you, then pretend it's honesty or just a joke. They want to see you squirm. They want to know they can reach inside you whenever they want. If you go for revenge, they get entertainment and escalation. They thrive on conflict because conflict gives them attention and control. You can't win against a sadist by trading blows. You win by making yourself unavailable to their games. No access, no audience, no reaction. Their trap, turn your pain into a long war where they get to keep touching you. This one rarely attacks alone. They harm you through whispers, group jokes, passive sabotage, exclusion, accidental disrespect. They recruit others because they lack the spine to stand alone. If you retaliate directly, you look like you're attacking a group out of nowhere. That's the setup. They want you isolated before you respond. Their trap, make you strike the wrong target so the crowd punishes you, not them. This type exists, and it's where naive men waste years. Careless people hurt you because they're sloppy, selfish, or immature, not because they're calculating. They don't need revenge. They need boundaries and distance. But here's the danger. Even if the harm was accidental, your revenge still makes you look weak, because it proves you can't regulate strategy under pressure. So whether they were malicious or careless, revenge is still the losing move. Now stitch it together. Each archetype has a different motive, but they all benefit from the same outcome: you becoming reactive. Revenge is the predictable reaction. Predictability is what your enemy is counting on. Your advantage begins when you stop taking hurt personally and start treating it as a diagnostic event. Who benefits from my reaction? Who wants me to lose composure? Who wants the room to see me as unstable? Who profits if I escalate? That's how you win without revenge. You don't give them the outcome they engineered. Revenge isn't dangerous because you might go too far. It's dangerous because it creates witnesses, and witnesses create stories. Stories create labels. Labels create restrictions. You think revenge is a private act between you and the person who hurt you. That's naive. The moment you retaliate, the battlefield expands. You're no longer fighting a person. You're fighting the room, the rules, and the records. And those three are designed to crush emotional men. The person who hurt you already has an advantage. They understand the game is social. If you retaliate, you hand them the highest value weapon in modern warfare: victimhood. Now they can recruit sympathy, allies, and institutional protection. Now your move becomes abuse, harassment, toxicity, obsession, threat, even if they started it. Because the public doesn't judge sequence, it judges optics. A Machiavellian principle: the first person to look emotionally unstable loses legitimacy. And once legitimacy is gone, everyone feels safe punishing you. Retaliation isn't just action, it's evidence. Screenshots, messages, witness statements, HR notes, legal records, reputation logs. You might win the moment and lose the decade because your enemy doesn't need to defeat you physically. They just need a file with your name on it. Revenge is how you build that file for them. You think you're striking back. You're actually signing your name on the weapon they'll use later. If they hurt you through manipulation, status games, and social leverage, and you respond with anger, you're fighting with the wrong tools. You escalate into their preferred terrain: chaos. Now they can do what predators love. Provoke you again, bait you into doubling down, make you look increasingly unstable, pull in third parties, widen the circle, until you're surrounded by opinions. Not facts. This is how feuds are engineered. Not by strength, but by forcing a man to keep reacting until he burns his own credibility. Revenge is reactive. Reactive men are steerable. This is the quietest loss and the most permanent. Revenge makes your identity revolve around the enemy. You start measuring days by progress. You build your self-image around being wronged and getting even. Now your enemy lives inside your decisions like a parasite. Even if you win, you've trained yourself to need enemies to feel direction. That's not power. That's dependency disguised as purpose. Machiavellian power is self-directed. Revenge is enemy-directed. Historically, the man who retaliates publicly becomes the cautionary tale. The man who responds structurally becomes the successor. Kings didn't stay kings by chasing every insult. They stayed kings by making insults irrelevant, by cutting access, building alliances, controlling narrative, and letting enemies collapse under their own appetite. Revenge is the peasant's version of justice. Loud, emotional, immediate. Strategy is the ruler's version. Slow, surgical, undeniable. And here's the brutal truth. Society punishes revenge more than it punishes the original harm, because original harm can be ambiguous, but revenge is visible. Visibility is liability. The enemy's deepest victory is not hurting you, it's converting you. When you retaliate from emotion, you adopt their methods: manipulation, humiliation, destruction. Now you're not escaping their world, you're joining it. And once you've joined it, you can't complain about it. You've become part of the same ecosystem. That's why revenge feels like justice, but functions like contamination. Revenge doesn't punish them, it exposes you. It gives them narrative leverage, institutional leverage, social leverage, and time leverage. The only way to win is to punish through position, not through rage. That's next. Revenge is a loud punch in a crowded room. A Machiavellian counterwin is quieter. You remove their leverage, control the story, and raise your position until their damage looks like a failed ambush. You don't get even. You get above. Here's the rule: punish behavior by changing access and outcomes, not by creating scenes. Scenes create witnesses. Witnesses create narratives. Narratives become chains. So your response is built on 4 moves, like a campaign, not a tantrum. Anyone who hurt you benefited from something: your attention, your labor, your loyalty, your access, your emotional bandwidth, your reactions. So you stop the flow. No instant replies, no favors, no extra effort, no explaining yourself into the ground. This isn't silent treatment. That's emotional. This is resource denial. In war, you don't chase raiders into the woods. You burn the bridge they use to return. You make future attacks unprofitable. If they used you, they now starve. If they enjoyed provoking you, they now get nothing to feed on. If they relied on your stability to look powerful, your absence makes them look exposed. Most revenge fails because you swing while your opponent is already writing the story. So you handle narrative like a strategist. You don't rant. You don't tell your side to everyone. You don't look desperate to be believed. You become calmly consistent and let their behavior contradict itself over time. When asked, you use one sentence: no emotion, no detail. I don't do business with that. We're not aligned. I've moved on. That tone does 2 things psychologically. It denies them drama, and it signals to observers that you're governed by standards, not wounds. A man defending himself loudly looks guilty or unstable. A man moving forward quietly looks high rank. Revenge wastes pain. Strategy uses it. If they hurt you at work, you build competency, alliances, documentation, optionality. If they hurt you socially, you upgrade circles and reduce exposure to low-status games. If they hurt you in a relationship, you rebuild scarcity. Attention becomes earned, not automatic. Leverage is any advantage that forces better treatment without begging. Skills that make you harder to replace, relationships that increase your status, money that buys distance, boundaries that remove entitlement, calm that makes you unreadable. Your enemy expects you to chase them. The counterwin is you building a life where they can't reach you and can't compete with you, not as self-improvement, as positioning. This is the part weak men can't handle. Consequences feel mean if you're addicted to being seen as good. But consequences are how reality enforces order. So your punishment is structural. They lose access to you. They lose the benefits you provided. They lose your cooperation. They lose your protection. They lose your platform. And if they violate again, the cost increases coldly, automatically. No speeches, no emotional billing, just enforcement. That's what Machiavelli meant in practice. Not revenge, but control of outcomes. The one rule that makes it work. Never do a move that requires them to feel bad to be effective, because their feelings are not your territory. If your strategy depends on their remorse, you're still owned. Your strategy must work even if they're shameless, especially then. So the Machiavellian counterwin is simple in design and brutal in effect. Deny access, deny reaction, control narrative with restraint, build leverage, quietly enforce consequences. Without heat, they wanted you emotional. You become operational. They wanted you reactive. You become selective. They wanted you to chase closure. You build distance and advantage. That is winning without revenge. The enemy doesn't get your rage, your time, or your identity, only the cold reality that you've become untouchable. If you still want revenge, you're not seeking justice. You're seeking anesthesia. Revenge is the emotional painkiller men use when they don't know how to hold power while bleeding. It gives you one cheap sensation, control, then hands your enemy the receipt. So the identity that must die is simple: the reactive man, the man who needs a counterpunch to feel whole, the man who can't sleep until the score is even, the man whose dignity depends on the enemy's suffering. That man is easy to manipulate because he's addicted to symmetry. Life isn't symmetrical. Power isn't fair. And the moment you demand fairness from predators, you announce you don't understand the habitat you're in. Here's what the reactive man worships: closure, validation, public vindication, emotional repayment. All four are traps. They keep you tied to the offender like a rope around your ankle. A Machiavellian operator doesn't worship closure. He worships control of exposure. The reactive man narrates, "He disrespected me. She betrayed me. They ruined my reputation." Then he makes the enemy the main character. That's the first loss. Replace narration with classification. This is a provoker. This is a parasite. This is an opportunist. Now it's not personal, it's pattern. And patterns don't provoke revenge, they provoke protocol. When hurt becomes data, you stop bleeding in public. The reactive man often hides behind morality, then breaks. He tries to be above it. He tries to be patient. He tries to be the bigger person. But because he never built enforcement, pressure accumulates until he explodes. And explosions are predictable. Predictable men are governable. Your replacement is colder. You don't forgive. You don't rage. You enforce. Enforcement is not anger. Enforcement is policy. Revenge is ego repairing itself with spectacle. You want them to know you're not weak. You want witnesses. You want the room to feel the correction. That's vanity pretending to be strength. High-rank men don't require witnesses. They require results. Your new metric is not did they suffer. Your new metric is, did I remove their access? Did I remove their leverage? Did I increase my options? Did I protect my name? That's sovereignty. Everything else is theater. The reactive man strikes immediately because his emotions demand a release. But timing is a weapon. Delayed consequence is often more lethal than instant retaliation because it's harder to trace, harder to frame, and harder to counter. You don't rush. You don't teach a lesson. You wait until the terrain favors you. That's why Machiavellian power looks calm. It's not calmness. It's patience with teeth. This is the core replacement. The reactive man can be bought with an insult, with a betrayal, with a smear, with a public jab. He pays with his composure. You become unbuyable, meaning no one can purchase your rage. No one can rent space in your mind by pressing a button. No one can steer your week with one disrespectful act. How? By installing one rule above your emotions. My strategy outranks my feelings. Feelings still exist. They just don't get votes. Identity replacement. The sovereign operator, the new identity, is not nice. It's not cold. It's selective. You choose who gets access. You choose when to respond. You choose what narrative you feed. You choose what consequences deploy automatically. And the most important shift, you stop needing to win the moment. You start building a position where they can't touch you at all. That's the identity death. The reactive man dies, and in his place stands a man who treats harm like reconnaissance. They revealed themselves. You adjust the map. You cut the route. You move forward. No revenge. No noise. Just advantage. If you still crave revenge after all this, admit the truth. They didn't just hurt you. They claimed you. Because revenge is not a strategy. Revenge is proof of possession. It means a person can press one button and take your time, your focus, your sleep, your dignity, like a remote control. That's ownership. You think you want to teach them a lesson. You don't. You want relief from the humiliation of being touched. And that's why revenge is the perfect cage. It feels like strength while it keeps you orbiting the original wound like a moth around a flame. Machiavellian power has one obsession: sovereignty. If another human can command your emotions, you are not sovereign, no matter how dangerous your fantasies are. So here's the final warning. The world punishes emotional men twice. First, by allowing them to be provoked. Second, by documenting their reaction and using it to restrict their future. Revenge makes you a predictable animal. Predictable animals get used by enemies, by institutions, by crowds, by friends who secretly enjoy watching you spiral. And crowds love a spiral because your fall makes them feel stable. This is why the strongest punishment is rarely direct. Direct punishment creates a villain and a victim. Indirect punishment creates a ghost, a person who removed himself, raised his position, and left the offender trapped with their own character. Your enemies don't fear your anger. They fear your absence and your advantage. They fear becoming irrelevant. That's the Machiavellian finish. You win so thoroughly that revenge becomes unnecessary, not because you forgave, but because you outgrew the battlefield they wanted you trapped inside. Now listen carefully. Winning without revenge does not mean being passive. Passive men get farmed. Winning without revenge means you choose punishments that don't expose you. You cut access. You cut supply. You cut narrative oxygen. You build leverage. You let time and consistency do the reputational work. And if you need a final metric, use this one. If your response requires their emotional reaction to feel complete, you're still owned. If your response works even if they feel nothing, you're free. That is the line between boys and operators. The last test. Can you let them get away with it? This question reveals whether you're built for sovereignty, because sometimes they will appear to get away with it. No punishment, no karma theater, no dramatic collapse, just life continuing. And that's where weak men relapse into revenge. They can't tolerate injustice existing without immediate payment, but power doesn't demand the universe behave morally. Power adapts to reality and still wins. A Machiavellian man understands not every enemy is worth striking. Some are worth starving. Some are worth ignoring. Some are worth stepping over while you build a position they can't reach. Your ego wants symmetry. Your sovereignty wants altitude. Pick one. Final warning. Revenge makes you accessible the moment you retaliate. You reopen contact. You reopen narrative. You reopen the relationship. Yes, even if it's war. You give them a reason to keep engaging you, baiting you, framing you, escalating you. Revenge is a door you reopen with your own hands. So if you want the clean win, you do the hardest thing. You stop feeding the wound with attention. You let them fade into the background of a life that no longer has room for them. That is not moving on. That is conquest through replacement, replacing the old you who needed repayment with the new you who only needs results. If you're serious, prove it with one action, not a comment, not a speech, not a threat. Pick one person who benefits from your reaction and do this. Remove access, remove supply, remove your explanation. Then watch what happens when they can't reach you emotionally. That's your initiation. And if you want a line to stamp your identity, use one word in the comments: unowned. Because the goal isn't revenge. The goal is to become the kind of man revenge can't control, because nothing and no one gets to live in your head without paying rent.